tell them.
So we have Numa Saisselin from, you want to introduce everybody?
Yeah, let me do
All right.
Thank you.
Let's give it up for Ellen. How's everybody feeling? Come on, you got to talk to me. Yeah. We are so excited about this event. Ellen is such a great energy with the Cultural Council, and they asked me to curate something, and I wanted to put together some of the most amazing artists and artistic minds in Jacksonville. So I want to introduce them to you because I'm just so excited to sit next to them. First, we have one of the most brilliant artists. I own some of her work. She's worked with Don't Miss a Beat, and I'm just excited to talk to her, and she has like one of the greatest energies, and that's Miss Elena Ohlander. When I was fortunate a few weeks ago, or maybe a month ago, to win the Arts Award for the Cultural Council Arts ceremony, and I saw a guy that I had not seen before. I was like, man, this guy's really hip, and I started hearing his name really probably the last couple of years. And so when I saw that he won, I was like, we got to do something together. And he is doing a lot of great stuff. He's what I like to call a hustler. He's out here. He's got a podcast, doing great things with the network, and so many other things you'll hear about today. And that's Mr. Al Pete. And when I got here, and I was like, man, I really want to come to Jacksonville, and I want to figure out how to really engage with the community. I thought about different key figures that I needed to meet, and everyone kept coming to me saying, you have to meet this guy. He is like the artistic mayor of Jacksonville. And I met him for lunch, and he's just such a wealth of information, and he's somebody, every time I talk to him, I learn such a great deal. And so even though this is quote unquote an artistic name, you also got to have people from the other side of the fence that are making a lot of decisions for the artistic community, and he is really an advocate. So please give it up for Mr. Numa Saisselin. And then, I'm an artist, and I was like, we can't just have an event where we're just doing a bunch of talking. We got to have some tunes and some music happening. So we got DJ Miss Energy. So the goal for this is to speak a little bit about what entrepreneurship is, my own experience with it, their experience with it, and then we want to open up the floor for those that may have some questions. And so I have a couple different sort of points that I want to talk about. The first thing is being a creative entrepreneur is something that's been very important to me really since I was much younger, because I understood that if I was going to be a jazz musician, particularly in the 21st century, you got to put it together. You got to figure out how to be resourceful. And so I started journaling about creative entrepreneurship probably about since I was maybe 18 when I moved to New York and went to Juilliard. And they started putting me in all these business classes where the first one was an orchestral business class, and the three things they told me to do was to write a really good bio, a really good resume, and a pitch letter to orchestras. And so, me being a crazy one, I raised my hand and I said, excuse me, all the orchestras are closing. There's just an article in New York Times, so why should we still write that letter? And the guy was like, I'll get back to you. So then I knew, I was like, okay, this isn't the music business class. And then the next class I had, they talked more about the industry and the recording industry that was changing, because when I was in college, the iPhone and iPod was just being invented. So literally, when I started at Juilliard, Tower Records was on 66th Street. Within the first year, that closed. So that's what we talked about, but no one really talked about career development. They did talk about how do you position yourself, how do you brand, how do you, what happens if you don't fit into the certain market? Like, some people are going to be singers and dancers and actors, but what if you want to be like a musician who's also a comic? What if you want to start a business that's arts focused, but you've never been an artist? So I wanted to create that, and so thankfully to the publisher Skyhorse Publishing, I've been fortunate to take all those notes I've made for 15 years and turn it into a book, and it's called The Musician's Career Guide, Turning Your Talent into Sustained Success. And so what I wanted to do today was have these amazing panels talk a little bit about their journey as entrepreneurs, and I wanted to give some pointers as well, and then we'll open it up. So a couple pointers first is, what is an entrepreneur, right? So an entrepreneur is a person who organizes or operates a business or businesses, taking on greater than normal risk in order to do so. Right? A creative entrepreneur is the same, but from a creative vantage point. I'm a numbers guy, so I love kind of listing some statistics, because sometimes you can come up with a lot of ideologies as an artist, but you really want to have some numbers back it up so that you can make the right moves. One of the, a couple of interesting statistics first is that there are over 582 million entrepreneurs in the world. 62% of them, of billionaires are self-made, right? 88% of millionaires are self-made, And in 2016, there were 25 million Americans who were starting or already running their own business. And then we have 22.5% of small businesses fail within the first year. And then the main reason why most businesses fail is because there is no market need. And lastly, I'll say before I invite the panelists to speak, steps to entrepreneurship. If you want to be an entrepreneur, first you need to start your own business or develop that business idea. The second thing I feel is the most important is you need to consult with other business owners. And then lastly, or sort of firstly, could be what is that idea going to be, and constantly be restructuring and reinventing. Because I think, as I've been an entrepreneur now for over 15 years, there is no road plan or roadmap, and I think it's always evolving, but as you work with different people who've also done it, and also being willing to fail. And sometimes I've had ventures that I fail at, but from that failure, it's launched me to be successful at other things. So it's a really kind of fluid sort of life. And you also have to be committed, and that's the one thing I've read in all the books and interviews of really wealthy and smart minds. Everybody says you have to find something you believe in and do not give up. So I want to turn it over to the panelists, and I just want to ask them the first question of what is the business idea or artistic idea you're committed to, and why?
Thank you, Ulysses. That'd be okay. I'm kind of soft-spoken, so how are you in the back? Can you hear me? Okay, good. Gosh, what am I committed to as far as my craft?
Your art and
putting it out there. Well, gosh, I suppose it starts with a passion and a mission. So the work that I create, it's kind of always been there. It's been, fluid throughout the years. Maybe I take a break and I explore other mediums of expression. So maybe when I'm very young, I drew and I painted and I did things of that nature to express my inner self, to communicate with the outside world. And some of that was a catharsis to deal with the world around me and my life. But then as I grew older, I was told from left and right that being an artist maybe isn't a sustainable income. It's not a career that I can make a living from. It's something that I have to do on the side to make money, as a hobby. So I thought, well, the next best thing is photography. So that's kind of the path that I took. I enjoy kind of capturing moments in a photojournalistic way. And then I turned the camera around and started doing self-portraiture. So I got my BFA in photography, and luckily the school that I went to was here in Jacksonville. It's no longer open. It was called the Art Institute of Jacksonville. It was a private college, but I think in the experience it was very liberal arts. It was really well-rounded, and we got exposure to some business courses for creatives. And that's not something that I saw in a lot of the other bigger institutions. Like, they weren't really focused on that. And so I learned a little bit about business for photography specifically, but it really helped me as I realized photography is not my expression. I went there 4 years and realized, well, this is probably not for me, but I got a great piece of paper. And lots of debt. But outside of that, I was working a day job and I realized this is also not for me. I spent over 10 years in the service industry working as a bar manager and various other jobs. But one day I decided to grab all of those things I had been accumulating over the years, like markers and pencils and all these other paints, and I put them in one place. I didn't have that before. It was like in a drawer over here, and a closet over here, and a bucket over here. And I put it all together in one room, and it just clicked. I was like, yeah, this feels good, it feels right. I quit my day job. I was so scared. Because, it is about big risk when you're an entrepreneur and you say, I don't know what's going to happen here, but I know that there's a drive. And the drive is to continue to express myself, and the people who see that and like it, they'll show up and they'll support in the various ways It doesn't have to be monetarily. It can be a social media post that shares with the greater community. It could be just anything, words of encouragement. Some days are really hard. You know, I show up to work every single day. I don't really get a day off. I don't know what that is anymore. So, but I love it. And I'd rather work for my dreams than work for someone else's.
Good morning. I guess I'm the outlier on the panel because I'm not really an artist. I should share with you I'm a failed artist. I went to college and got a bachelor's degree in French horn, and I learned while I was in college that while I was good enough to get the degree, I was never going to make a living at it. That there were other musicians in school with me who were really talented, and I was not one of them. And I remember thinking, and these are the musicians at a state school, what are they like at Juilliard? Like, they're gonna, we're on Facebook Live, so I shouldn't. You know what I was about to say. So, I went and I taught school for a year. I taught music in a public school for a year to special education students, and I discovered I wasn't good at that either. But I'd had two things going at the same time for my whole life, and one was I was on the tech crew in the drama club in high school, and I had music. And I continued to work as a stagehand while I was in college. That's part of how I paid for college. And when I figured out I was not going to make a living as a musician, and then I figured out I was not going to make my career teaching, I started to realize that there were people in the offices of the theaters and venues that I had played in as a musician or worked in as a stagehand, and they were responsible for booking the shows and marketing the shows and keeping the venues going, and I thought I might like to do that. And I kind of accidentally stumbled into my career, really at a very young age, like it was a year out of college. So I feel like I was really lucky that I figured it out that young. And everything I hated about being a musician, I loved about being an administrator. So I didn't like to practice. Maybe that's one reason I wasn't a very good musician. I didn't like being in a small room by myself, practicing the same scale over and over again. I didn't like the rigidity of being told what to do by a conductor. And really, my personality was not well suited for it because I just did not have that singular focus on something that I wanted to perfect. Conversely, the thing that did become my career is really well suited for me because it's a little of everything. So my day is a little art, a little politics, a little marketing, a little sales, a little human resources, a little finance. And I love that I play in all these different sandboxes on a routine basis. And I really count myself fortunate that I figured out a thing I could do in the arts that would enable me to make a meaningful contribution to the overall ecosystem. Because there need to be people who run the galleries, run the theaters, run the performing arts centers, represent you as gallery owners and talent agents, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So I feel really fortunate that I figured my place out. The question, I believe, however, was, now that I'm finished talking about myself, what do you do about business?
You answered it though, like how did you find your passion, but like why? But I think to me you answered it.
But one thing I wanted to say that my daily life is about the balance between business and art, and that changes day to day, month to month, year to year. When I've been in Jacksonville 8.5 years now. I got here in the fall of 2012. At that time, our focus was building the business of the Florida Theater. So that just became booking shows that are going to sell tickets. And then at a certain point, the business stabilized, and we could start to open things up a little bit. So then it became, well, how do we continue to book shows that are going to make money? Because the Florida Theater is a big building. It costs $10,000 to $20,000 just to open the building for a night before we pay the performers, so there's a financial imperative. But once the business stabilized, then it began to become, well, okay, so now what do we do? How do we make this meaningful? and then we can add back in a little art. We have to do it in a responsible way. We've got to pay for it, so we've got to make sure we're making enough money and fundraising enough money to pay for all of this. Because it does nobody any good if you have good art, but you go bankrupt doing it. And also along the way, that's meant we began presenting modern dance companies. We began the beginnings of an arts education program, etc. Now, we have been closed since March, so we haven't had really much business to speak of for 7 months. The good news is we're going to be open in December. The state of Florida going into phase 3 allows us to be open, but we're going to be open at half our capacity. So we're going to have to figure out how the heck to pay for all of this again, and we're going to have to build the business up again. So the sad part, the good news is we're open. The sad news is our focus for a while again is going to be all on finances and building the business back up. And it's going to mean some things are not going to happen. So, and I think that that's true for individual artist careers as well. That, you know, when you're young and you don't really care where you live and, you know, you're all about your art, your decision making can be one way, but as you grow and you know, you want a nice place to live, and maybe you get married, you want kids, and you know your focus changes. So it's a constantly evolving, ever-changing. It's more like sailing a boat than it is managing a career. You're constantly packing back and forth according to what your needs are and the imperatives of the market.
Thank you, Numa.
Let's see. Good afternoon, everybody. Both of y'all stories were definitely inspiring because I share like all of that. Definitely with you because I want to get more into the admin side of things because I understand the community that I serve. And I'm not saying this to be funny, don't really understand the admin side, the administrative side, and I pride on it a lot. I grew up with that mentality, be the man of the house, making sure that everything is straight with my brothers, my cousins, and stuff like that, and just being in that mode of administration and following policy. It's easy for me to be creative and juggle the creativity and the admin side. And the more that I'm developing myself on this, that's why I started my network. I was like, well, I just feel like there's a void, and I feel like if somebody's going to do it, I've been pushing it off for like 2 or 3 years. For like 2 years, I was like, we need a network, we need a hub, we need a hub for, like, even with hip hop, because I'm a hip hop artist. I'm a hip hop artist first. Like, if you ask me what my creative spot is, it's hip hop. I love hip hop. I'm got an album releasing on Monday, actually.
Nice.
Straight promo, VABN. So, but I know I got thrown off, but your story.
Let me just say, if you can keep your siblings in line, you're totally set for an arts admin.
Right, exactly. So even with that, I find myself having to keep my community in order sometimes, and I feel like when it comes to my community, I love them to death. I'm African American at heart, right? But it's a lot of things that we need to understand in our community, and we need to fix and we need to check. Now things are owed to us, but at the same time too, we need to be putting out the energy as well. I feel like I'm the best representative of that. I felt like that was a void in the overall aspect of things, but definitely with my African American community. And I feel like I'm the person that needs to explain that to them and be a representative of it, and we just need to have it. So when it comes to, my secondary thing is media. I just got a degree, FSCJ and MA for communication and media. I really pride on communication. I just love English. I love how news is being interpreted. I love the ways of it being going out. I feel like when it comes to being a creator, the media part needs to be the secondary part. And to me personally, I feel like once you get your creativity and your product, you need to be hitting other media sources, and they need to be going to distributing your information out. And then that's when it gets to the admin part and gets to the marketers, the salespeople, you know, and that's my thought. And that's how it worked for me over the years when it comes to me being a hip hop artist, being a DJ, being a podcaster, and just being an overall curator of my network and being a supporter of the arts and the art culture. So, yeah, I mean, that's been my pride. That's been my pride. That's what keep me going. I just realized this void. I realized the void in my community. And at the same time too, I feel like we need more. Like more media outlets, more ways of getting stuff out. Granted, we respectfully have Folio Weekly. Granted, we respectfully have Void Magazine. But we need, you know, NPN Network to be there, to be the filter to get to these other people as well, because there are dope artists out there, regardless of gender, race, or whatever. Because overall, I'm a very proud supporter of the arts. And I feel like more is always better. So that's how I developed it or whatever. I went back to school because I felt like, okay, well, that was a goal that I had. I went to school and I had to drop out because I had a son and raised him. And that was just one of my personal goals for me and my grandma. I was like, I'm going to get this degree. So I finally got a degree. But I knew having this degree would put me in different circles and different tables that I can have these conversations with. And it's helped. And I'm still learning that more. But at the end of the day, I just really pride off my community, you know, being kind of sufficient all the way around, like all the way through. So I don't want to be the problem. I don't want to be the one complaining about it. I'm like, well, and I ain't gonna lie. I complained about it plenty of times. Oh, ain't nothing to do in Jacksonville, or I send my stuff to so and so and they don't put it up, and this and the third. But it's like, you know, I had to understand the methods and the policies of things and how systems work. And you know, for me to be able to understand that factor and want to step in the admin role and be creative and bring some of my creativity to how I market and what I do, it's like the best thing ever. And it's like a lot of other people that I really champion that's on the network and outside the network. And shouts out to Energy, like, you know, it's a lot of, I see a lot. I look at her and like her inspiration, the way that she plays music, everything that she does, it's like, she might see 5 things, but in my mind, I see 10 things. So, and the last thing I'm gonna say is, to me, I know we talking about policies and stuff, but in my mind, I'm like, I don't have no rules with this. Like, I'm gonna just try it out and see. And if I feel like it needs to work, then it's gonna work, and we're gonna make it work. So with those other 5 things that I have for Energy, we're gonna try it. And we can only do what we can, and we go from there. So, and I won't get deeper to the money part of it. I mean, of course, that's a factor. But I'm in the process now of tapping back into my faith. I felt like I gotten away from my faith, but my faith is still kind of like grounded, and I just really pride off that, and the energies that be bring that back to me and bring those resources back to me, and I'm able to move accordingly with my network and with my brethren, etc.
Great.
Yeah.
Great. Thank you. And it's so inspiring. So now what we're going to do, we're going to get into the nitty gritty, right? Everybody's told their story, told kind of how they started. Now, you know, this is the part that used to frustrate me and is why I wrote the book, because I felt like everybody in some regard, not here, but we would talk very inspirationally and, you know, it just comes together. But nobody actually said, okay, how do you start the business? If you start the business, where do you get the money from, right? So I want each person to, and I'll start it, list like an actual thing that helped you create what you're sitting on. So for me, I'll say what really helped me, whether it was me writing a book or even with Don't Miss a Beat, I had to learn how to write a business plan. And what that is that, and if people really need like even more demonstration, like I'm also a teacher at heart, you talked about your core, I really believe that we have to teach people. And so I'm happy to show people, you know, business plans for those that really want more insight. But I started out, like I remember with Don't Miss a Beat, we sat in the room with like 6 people, with my aunts, mother, and all of them, and we said, what do we want to accomplish? And so the first thing we said, well, we've been building a bunch of community organizations for church, but what do we want to do? So we first said, well, we want to do a nonprofit organization. So we looked up a template of what that is, and we printed that out, and we said, okay, we looked at all the different, policies and how that runs. So then we first said, who's going to occupy these different positions? So we did that. Then we said, okay, what is going to be our idea? We did that. Then we said, okay, well, who are the partners that can help us launch that idea? And so for us, that was, which is now Kids Hope Alliance, but it was Jacksonville Children's Commission. So we kind of started with that, and then Gwendolyn, who's our Director of Development, aka Mom, decided that she was going to go down to the Children's Commission, and her doing that is what led us to starting our summer camp, and here we are 13 years later. For me, as an artist, I sat down and said, okay, Ulysses, what really moves you? First, I knew I wanted to be what we call a sideman, which is basically a musician that works with a lot of people. So I started saying, well, who are the bands that I wanted to work with? What is their music? Because if I want to work with a band, I got to learn their music before I get invited to the rehearsal. Because sometimes the band, you get one shot, right? Then as, you know, a producer, I started my production company 10 years ago. I started saying, okay, how do I want to build a production company? And then, you know, with the book, you know, I sat down, how do, you know, if anybody's in here has ever written a book, one of the first things you have to do with books to get, especially publisher love, is you got to do a book proposal, which is a bear. Like it is, you know, the thing about book proposals is you have to talk about your idea, fully vetted, chapters and all that. Then you have to do a whole other presentation on all the other competing and existing books that could either promote or get in the way of your book doing well. So I say all that to say, learning how to write a business plan helped me for all these other things and areas that I went into. And even though, like Al Pete said, there's funding and there's all these other things, I think for me, what I want to put out here, whoever wants to be an entrepreneur and really develop something in a sustainable way, learn how to write a business plan, and also go onto Google and look at many different business plan templates. So that's the sort of seed I want to drop. I don't know what thing helped you the most.
Thank you. That was very informative.
Oh.
Yeah. Let's see. Where do I begin? I guess when I quit my job. Yeah. I did have a few of those business courses that I mentioned, but none of those things could prepare me for entrepreneurship. You know, so being in it as a creative, naturally, for me, I want to focus on my art. I don't want to focus on all of the administrative end of things and, you know, I don't know, there's just so much involved, which I felt really overwhelmed by in the beginning. Because I didn't have a plan. I didn't have a plan. I just quit my job without a plan. I don't recommend it. I recommend having a plan. It's very stressful. But, you know, I learned as I went. I started asking myself things like, what do I need and what do I want? And how do I get there? But further than that, I said, well, this is how I get there. Because you do your due diligence and you look it up and you read books. I bought tons of books. There's so many books out there on art entrepreneurship and how to market yourself on all ends of the spectrum. I highly recommend to buy the books. If you need a list, I can give it to you. Reach out to me. I have no problem sharing that information. Because I think in order to know where you're going, you need those, you know, foundational elements to know what to do. So reading those books, I started saying, well, I definitely need an LLC. I can't be working under the table for cash money. The IRS isn't going to come for me because I'm not making that much, but they will eventually, and I want to do this right. And so I, started an LLC. I looked up how to do that in the state of Florida. It's actually a really easy process. It's so simple, and it's worth every penny because it protects you. I chose an LLC. There are many forms of, small businesses that you can create. There's S-corps and there's all this stuff. But for me, an LLC worked, and it's been working for me for 3 years now. I have all these things that are part of my process. My process, I'd like to say, is every day I make artwork and I live in clouds. But I don't. Actually, probably 70% of the time I spend on my computer looking up grants, because grants is how I got my money to do my very first solo exhibition the first year in my business. So there are national ones, there are local ones, and I think local ones are really beautiful because they want to support their community. So if you can look up how to create a proposal, if you can look up how to make a budget, you know, and something that's tangible for others to understand, they give you money. You know, you have to claim that as income, but it's totally worth it. So I say, you know, do your due diligence, look up, you know, when you're gonna approach maybe a gallery, for example, I get that question all the time. How do you have your work in gallery here or gallery there? And oftentimes, it's because I sought it out. I did the work, I looked for the call for artists, I applied, and not only did I send them an email after the application process, I found out who am I talking to, right? I'm not gonna say to whom it may concern, right? I'm gonna find out who's the gallery director, I'm gonna email them directly or my point of contact. And I think having those processes as part of your everyday life really creates a fluidity that will build those building blocks for success.
I think the thing that helped me the most, which is also applicable to being an artist, is talking to people. Networking and talking to people, especially people who are older and more experienced than I was. Just learning from other people, which is a really hard thing to do, because if you've kind of gone to music school or gone to art school, or you've had success as an artist, it's really easy to think that you have your act together, that you know everything. And it's hard to humble yourself and go to people and say, listen, I want to do this, but I have no clue. And just as an administrator, I learned a lot from people who had gone before me, who had got their careers going earlier than I did, or who had already saved the theater, and I could learn from those people. And I think it's important, if you're going to network with people, you also have to network with people outside your circle. Because it's a big world, and it's so easy to think, well, I went to that networking event. That's great, but that's a networking event in your county, and it's a small circle of people. If you're going to the Palatka Art Commune, I hope nobody's from Palatka, but if all you're doing is going to the Palatka art community, well, you're not really expanding your boundaries. So you've got to talk to a lot of people and keep widening that circle, because there's a lot of knowledge out there, and the people who have gone before you are, for the most part, happy to share. I know that I've made it my mission to pass that along. That and I always tell people, listen, I'm happy to spend an hour with you on the phone, because 20 years ago, I was the dork who didn't know anything, and someone spent an hour on the phone with me. So I, try to make it my mission to pass back. But I think just networking, talking to people, that even if you go to school, say you want to be an administrator, you go to school and they give you the technical skills. It's like going to law school. You go to law school, they teach you the law. They don't teach you how to be a lawyer. They don't teach you how to go into the courtroom and litigate a case. You don't learn the street skills. And I'm thinking of a story about this studio guitar player named Tommy Todesco. Tommy Todesco is a really famous studio guitar player. He was in Los Angeles. He died a few years ago. But between like 1960 and 1980, he's on every record. He's on the Star Wars soundtrack. He's on a bunch of Beach Boys records. He's the guy who got the first call. And he was a really funny guy. So there's a lot of YouTube videos out there that you can Google and find. But the story I'm thinking of is that he said when he would get a call and the producer working in a session would say, can you be here in 20 minutes? He would say yes, all the time, knowing full well it was going to take him at least an hour and a half in Los Angeles traffic. But he knew that if he said, no, it's going to take me an hour and a half, they'd say, okay, we're going to call someone else. He knew that the secret to getting that gig, and if you're a studio session, it's getting the gig, he knew that he had to say yes and lie to the guy. Because that would make them stop calling all the other musicians. And, that's the kind of street skill you only learn by talking to people.
Yeah, great. So lesson is a lie. I'm just wondering.
Lie your way to the top.
that stick out to me. So I'm a DJ. Short story. Me and my brother, and my cousins, we used to always throw like these kickback parties on Fridays, and it's so funny when I revisit these things back. Like everybody's doing whatever, you know, we get crabs, food, you know, drink and stuff like that, and I will always be by the radio, always be by the radio. And I would be acting like I was on the radio. I would be like, hey, you know, I play a song and I turn it down, talk to the people. And it would be like, this is like when I'm like 20, 21, you know what I'm saying? So it's like a, you know, some ladies in front of me, they just like, oh, it's cute. You know what I'm saying? This is Al Baker, you know? So, riding to work one day, what was the show? Doug Banks' morning show. They said if you're a Tim Caller, you win $1,000. I was like, whatever. So I called it, Tim Caller, got $1,000. So I'm like, what in the hell do I do? And I'm like, either I can go buy a bunch of clothes and go stunt or whatever, or I can just invest in some equipment, some DJ equipment. So thank goodness for responsibility. That plays a major role when it comes to being an entrepreneur. I mean, you take chances as well, but I mean, you know, I had a son, he was like 4 years old at the time too, so I could have put that $1,000 easily on him. But I had to like sit back and be like, well, he's good. I got him everything, he's great. I was like, I'm just gonna shoot the trigger, and I bought my first equipment, and the rest is really history on that, man. Like as far as DJing, and I really feel like DJing really gave me the avenue to do like everything else. Like even rapping, like I got to a stopping point because I couldn't pay for the studio time, I couldn't pay for beats and stuff like that, but DJing really like enhanced everything. Like I was able to pay bills, pay for my son's care all the way till he graduated from high school, like all that. So just being wise and being responsible, I think that plays a role. The second thing, so I have a podcast network, MPN Podcast Network. It's like 16 of us on it now, 16 podcasters. This whole week, and even now, so Charlotte Podcast Festival is going on now, right? So with the COVID thing going on, it has stopped a lot of things. But when it comes to a lot of conferences and festivals, a lot of these people have moved it online, and they moved it for free. And I've been telling all podcasters, I've been bugging them all day. Like I've been in some of these on the Zoom calls, and the first thing I do when I go on there, I go and look and see if anybody else that I know is on the thing. And I'm like, nobody else on there. And this is Charlotte. This is a whole new world outside of like Jacksonville. And I'm telling them like, please sign up for these things because it's free information. It's free information. It's free information. It's free information. It's like I'm thinking so like
How much is that information?
I was literally saying that online, like I was like free, and I have my website where I do my blogs and stuff, and I posted on there, and even with the hip hop festival, A3C festival, that's one of the top 3 hip hop festivals for like local artists in Atlanta. They switched theirs to free. Wow. They conference for free. They talking with, I don't know if y'all familiar with Versus with Swiss Beats and Timbaland. Like they interviewed Swiss Beats and Timbaland like on the Zoom call for free. Wow. And I'm like, I'm not gonna be a fool and miss this. Yeah. Like I'm gonna get every information I can get from this. Yeah. So I mean, like the whole month Charlotte Podcast Festival is going on. Like the whole month, all the way to the 30th. Wow. All kind of things. Even if I know about it, I'm signing up for it because I'm like, I'm gonna go in with an open mind, act, you know, and as if I don't know anything, and I did this with school too, and I love school. But when I went back to school, in communications and media field, I've already have done a lot of the stuff that they talked about. So I'm going in there and I'm like, well, I kind of know it, but I didn't go in there on something where I know. I just went in there with an open mind. Every day I went to school, I was like, let me go in here as if I don't know anything. And every time I went, I came back with another way of doing things and all kind of information. Well, you should do it like this. Like my marketing skills, that's extremely stronger for just being open-minded and being responsible when it comes to like doing the due diligence and researching and it's things like that that propel me when it comes to like my overall business and me being an entrepreneur.
Great job. Thank you. So, with a little bit of time left, I want to open up the floor, and I want to state this, because in a lot of panels this happens. Please ask a question, do not make a statement. We have some amazing people up here, because sometimes you have people who just want to say something, and I think that's great. You can pull us aside later, but I think this is the time for those of you all to get some great insight. Alpi said something really powerful, the way, and I think Numa echoed this as well, the way to get better is to learn and to be open-minded. And you're in a space right now where you can just ask the right question and get the information for free. Yeah. So, floor is open. Who wants to ask a question? Yes.
So what if you are an artist, but you're not good at the promotions and the marketing? Like it's just not your thing. And so what do you do at that point?
Great question. I'm gonna answer that, and then Alpi. Well, I'll let you answer first. You go.
So what I'm learning when it comes to entrepreneurship, and just me.
They ask the question so they can hear.
Do we ask a question? If you can't, if you're not good in marketing, promotions, what do you do as a creator, as an artist? So with me, I'm learning how to delegate more.
Yes.
That's one. And two, I'm learning how to understand that people just don't. A lot of people just don't know how to do things. So that cuts my frustration out because I be thinking that people should know. And granted, there is a lot of information to show you and tell you how to do it. It just might not be in the person's place to do it. Like you can't make somebody cook greens if they don't want to cook it. It's as simple as that, and that's respected. That's respected. But when it comes to that, delegation is definitely important. So you have to do research to find out who's strong in those markets. And honestly speaking, it could be your friend. Like you could have a friend for years and don't even know that they're like great at promotions, marketing, or they have like a vision. So you just reach out to them, and it goes back to what you're saying, talking to people, and you never know. You just talk to somebody and sitting at a bar, and next thing you know, they become your business partner for 10 years or whatever the case is. But delegation is good.
Yeah, I want to echo that, and again, more of a step by step. So I think with marketing, to Alpi's point, I think figure out what is it you need help with, right? So is it social media? Is it you're putting out a project, so you want to get someone to represent you, or you have an event coming up and you need event PR. So I would say target, and then to his point, then delegate based on that. Because I think a lot of people, to your point, they think about things like PR and marketing and they loop it all together. When to me social media showed up, that split the marketing game. It was used to say PR and marketing, and that meant kind of like just getting your stuff out there. Now PR and marketing is so different and so vast. Because you've got like social media, then you've got like local area marketing, then you've got corporate marketing, then then you've got educational marketing. There's so many tiers, so I think we have to define what that is. And then I think the other part is being authentic. And even when with the other piece you said, some things you aren't going to get better at. Like I'm also in grad school right now. One of the things that I'm learning in grad school, one of my classes, we're having to design a lot of like organizational charts. I'm not an Excel guy. I can write 20,000 Word documents in 2 hours, but I cannot get the first step started on Excel. I can't. I've never been good at it, but my friend is excellent at it. So sometimes, like for certain things, I'm like, you know what, hey man, I need your help with this, and I get help. So some things, it's okay to not be good at it or even try to get good at it. Just save money or partner and let somebody else who's already good at it, help you. So I agree with that. Another question. Who else wants to ask?
So this is from our Facebook Live. So we have a comment asking, are you familiar with storefronts? They help artist markets, but they have a really high initial fee. So if you have any comments on that.
Storefront, I'm not clear on that. Is somebody else clear on that? Yeah, I'm not clear on that, but we can,
What was the question one more time?
So the question verbatim, are you familiar with storefronts? They help artists market, but their initial fee is $1,000.
Oh, so this is a platform. Storefront is, and they help artists market. Okay, so for some that may want to look into that, it's called Storefront, and you can market, but like you said, it's expensive.
The Culture Council has one coming up.
Oh.
And I know a few different places around Jacksonville, but probably we don't have exact places and prices. Wildcrafters is one.
Yeah.
You know, I'd say to the person on Facebook, I'd be dubious about anything online that charges you an upfront fee. Because, like you were saying, there's probably 12 people in your universe that can help you out already without having to even meet a new person. And that's the place to start first. And I would spend money on someone local before I spend anything online.
Yeah, there's and you just made me think of something, Numa. There's a couple great local agencies like we work with on ideas. There's also, is it the Dalton agency? There's also what's the other one?
Brunette Garcia.
Yeah, Brunette Garcia. You know,
ideas.
Yeah. So there's a lot of them, and I will say a lot of these agencies, and that's how we started working on ideas. They are starting to have a branch or an element where they are working with smaller artists or smaller entities. Because I think before, these agencies wouldn't even return your phone call. But now I think with social media, a lot of them are starting to have like an arm of helping kind of local people. So that's another element as well. Any other questions?
So after you graduated,
Yes.
you are an artist.
Yes.
Every now and then you get your budget.
Yeah.
But then you don't have places like the Culture Council that helps you promote and keep on going.
Yeah.
What is your code mechanism or your support system to continue to strive and be an artist and go with your business and not say, screw this, I'm gonna go flip burgers.
Yeah.
I mean, we're all been there.
Yeah.
I know you have. We talked about this.
Yeah.
You know, what do you hold on to continue going?
So this is going to sound interesting. I'm a multitasker, and one of the things that has sustained me financially is doing a lot of different things at the same time. So, like for instance, when COVID happened, I spent probably before COVID probably 60-70% of my income was being on the road, which is like most people here never saw. When COVID happened, that completely ended it. Well, the thing that started to help me was working for my nonprofit and doing other educational things. And like you talked about, I went and got some equipment set up, and now I started doing Zoom lessons or whatever. So I think every time I hit a low point, I then tapped into another skill that I had and started building that and working that muscle. And I think that happened even back when I was in school. Like at Juilliard, I wasn't known as a drummer or whatever. So that I literally was teaching. I was an admin at Jazz at Lincoln Center. I was like going in and helping their middle school jazz program. Then I was teaching various school programs. I had a private lesson studio. I was working at LaGuardia School of the Arts. I also was singing with a Lou Rawls impersonator in Harlem. I was also, even that's why people talk to me now, they're like, you got like 10 jobs. Yeah, that's how I keep money in the bank. It may not be a lot in there, but I know there's a steady flow, and that flow comes from different things always coming and going and working. So right now, I may not be back on the road until maybe, if I'm fortunate, summer of 21. Well, what am I going to do from October to 21? Doing those Zoom things, sitting on different panels, and don't miss a beat. We have great programs and things that are happening where I'm able to even get a certain level of income through that. So I think it's never, and I think Numa and Elena said this, it's never like one formula, but I think what has helped me the most is having a bunch of different things. And I do want to clarify that though, I'm doing a lot of different things, but still from a focused place. So I think we have to be careful that all those things still come back to me being a drummer, a musician, being an educator, as opposed to I'm not, and there's no shade, but I'm not like running to McDonald's and then running to be admin at this and then running, like I'm not running across industries. Everything is still in the same sort of neighborhood. I'm just saying, okay, this house is closed for this week, so let me go to that house. And I think as I built the true educational platform, the studio platform, and now the writing, that's helping as well, and performing, then certain things can kind of step up when other things are not there.
This is going to be a little psychological, but I think you have to be really honest with yourself about what you want to do.
Yeah.
Like, working in music and art is the only thing I ever wanted to do. Really early on, I worked with a guy on a summer job, and we were at an outdoor amphitheater on the crew, and He was going to quit because he could make more money going to paint houses with his father. And for him, it was an economic calculation. Like, for half the time I spend here, I could be over there making twice as much money. For me, I never thought about it. It's the only thing I wanted to do, and it's still the only thing I want to do. And I think if you're, and conversely, that's why I wasn't a good musician, because it wasn't the only thing I wanted to do. But I think if you're honest with yourself and you find out that, like, you know, I want to be a musician, I want to be a painter, I want to be a graphic artist, you know, like once you are focused on that, you'll figure everything else out. And you just got to figure out, like, it's like, well, what's that Billy Crystal movie, City Slickers? You know, when Curly says, life is all about one thing.
Yeah.
Like, once you figure out what your one thing is, you'll figure the rest of it out.
And I do want to give a shout out to Yang, who now he and I are starting to do a lot of different things together. And as I've watched his business grow as well, like over the last year, you have so many different relationships and partners coming to the business. And I think that's also helped you stretch into other industries. And that's kind of how I also want to close this whole thing. I think the most powerful tool to being an entrepreneur or being successful, or whatever you define success as, is building relationships. Someone told me many, many years ago that the relationship is that one thing that stands in between everything you want, right? Like everything is connected by a relationship. You know, all of us are here based on someone we knew. This building is here based on someone you knew. I mean, relationships are the missing link or the connecting link in everything. So even if you forget some of the stuff we talk about today, if you connect to one good person that can link you to the right information, that would be the deciding factor. So I do want to thank again our amazing panelists. I want, you know, for those that want to talk to us more, I'm happy to talk afterwards, but I'm very big on like punctuality and letting people go when we say we're going to let them go. Otherwise, we could stay here another 2 hours. But I want to just please put our hands together for LP, Numa, Elena, and I have to tell you, we got, and I have to give a shout out to our DJ, who she's DJ Energy, but I know her as Jihan, and she is one of the most amazing social media people. Particularly, I'm just talking about Jacksonville. She is so great here, and I remember getting introduced to her through her work and how she did such great work working with the Cultural Council. And so then I heard she's a DJ, and I'm loving her as a DJ, so I just want to give you a shout out. And thank Yang, and then lastly, and I'll invite Ellen back up, I want to thank the Cultural Council. Elena, you talked about grants. I'm thankful to have been a recipient of some of their grants. I'm thankful for Don't Miss a Beat, to be supported by them. So definitely if you're in the educational world or, you know, art sector here, look into them. I know Numa is supported, the Florida Theater by them. So thank you to the Cultural Council for this opportunity. And here you go, Ellen.
This is great, guys, because, I mean, obviously so many times with artists, with any creatives, you're like working on two sides of the brain if you're trying to do the business part and your creativity. So this is such great advice. So I just want to shout out to Regions Bank, who sponsored this, and they're doing our whole sponsored money for our entrepreneur workshops. And as I mentioned before, we'll have some more of those in 2021. So this was fantastic. We had a few great comments on Facebook. One of them was from our chairwoman, Janet Wilford Ford, just thanking you all. And just a great job you did. So again, just want to thank Yang and Wildcrafters. If you haven't been to Wildcrafters, come on out. This is non-alcoholic, very cool bar in Riverside. It's awesome. What was there anything else I wanted to say? I just wanted to say to your comment about Yang mentioned things the Cultural Council does to help artists. We do have right now the Arts Directory, and if any of you, I know some of you here are actually on that, and it's actually it's $35 a year to join, and it's basically your own sort of mini website. So you can find out more about that. You can upload unlimited images, any information about yourself, contact information. This way, designers or people looking for public art or anything they're looking for, they can just go in and do a search on sculpture or muralist or theaters or anything like that, and find everything that there is in the 5-county area here in Jacksonville. So you can also find that at the Arts Directory on our webpage, culturalcouncil.org. I think that's it. Again, just thank you to the panelists, Freedom Bank, Yang, Wildcrafters, everybody.